Thank you, thank you. I appreciate everyone coming out this evening. My name is Arthur Sheffield. I'm a board member for the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. We are pleased to have you all join us this evening for this presentation between Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce and the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. These types of interactions we hope will become very fruitful and lead to a lot of business opportunities and social networking amongst our two organizations. And I would like to introduce the presidents of our organizations this evening, Tarnisha Clyett from the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce and Brittany Lamont from the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys so much for being here, as Arthur said, for a meaningful dialogue. This is something that we started last year in partnership with the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance, and I think it's a great thing to have a partner that cares just as much as we do about the whole community at large. So when we talk about Black community members, it's the entire community that we're referencing. So we're going to say some things that are probably going to make your skin crawl a little bit or maybe flinch a little bit. It's intentional, right? Yeah, it's intentional. But again, we thank you guys so much for being here. It means a lot that you've taken the time to intercept in this wonderful dialogue. Again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tarnisha, and thank you for your leadership in this event. This event was also made possible by a lot of our friends here locally. So Bank of America, thank you for your continued support. The Manatee Community Foundation, the Bradenton Area Convention Center for hosting us today. Embracing Our Differences, I hope you had a chance to experience the artwork on your way in. METV, and then my fellow Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance board member, PRA Architects, John Holtz, thank you for your support. Hope you guys also got a chance to enjoy the amazing food, and that was also thanks to our friend John as well.
Thank you, Tarnisha and Brittany. With that, I would like to bring up Nicole Parker, one of our sponsors, our key sponsor tonight from Bank of America, for a few words.
Thank you, Arthur, and welcome everyone. On behalf of Bank of America, I just wanted to say I certainly acknowledge and appreciate the attendance tonight. We are excited, as we have always supported diversity in our community. And I just want to say we're in for a very exciting, courageous conversation this evening. So thank you again, and enjoy the show.
Thank you, Nicole. Next, I'd like to bring up a colleague of mine, my fellow colleague in architecture and just in the built environment and just an all-around good individual, Mr. John Holtz from the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance.
Thank you, my dear friend Arthur Sheffield, and welcome everybody. Either we doubled or tripled the amount of people or we shrunk the room from last year. This is great. Welcome everybody. My name is John Holtz, and I'm the partner in charge of Plunkett Racich Architects, and I'm a dual member, like some of us are tonight. I'm a member of Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance. I'm on the board, but I'm also a member of the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce, my firm is, and I know Nicole is as well. So y'all can do that too. You can join both of these organizations and really get involved and really elevate community. And I was really excited, my firm was, to sponsor the food tonight. I think that food really brings people together. So thanks J&J Barbecue, it was absolutely delicious. Food gets people together, they start to talk, they converse, they really start to listen to each other, kind of melts away the differences over the barbecue and spilling over everybody's hands. Just that the flavors mix together, and we start to mix together. And as we elevate each other, I think we really begin to share and embrace each other's differences, and we start to talk about things that we might not really understand each other's positions, but we begin to have those crunchy conversations. And we begin to understand that maybe there isn't a level playing field. So when you, just using the analogy, on the racetrack, we have 36 cars at the Indy 500. All those cars have wheels, they all get gas, they all get a driver. You imagine if only 24 cars had wheels, the other 12 didn't, or 12 of the cars only had a half a tank of gas. Well, I think what we've been dealing with for generations in our country is that not everybody has the same equipped car. But if we did, we could all compete equitably. And I think tonight's conversation, Tarnisha teed it up great, it's going to get a little crunchy. It's going to be really uplifting, invigorating. We might have to check the thermostat in the room. Arthur and I are architects, so we'll man that area. But I really want this to be a wonderful conversation among all of our panelists. We have 3 really charged and exciting topics. And I hope that when we leave this room tonight, we can put together some really good action items and race along that track. And when we're all competing, we're all winning, we're all elevating the community together. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here.
John, as always, thank you for your pearls of wisdom. I always enjoy my conversations with him. He is a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. Our next speaker this evening will be Sarah Werthmeyer from Embracing Our Differences. She's the executive director of that organization.
Thank you very much for having us. We are thrilled to be here and thrilled to be able to display our artwork in the hallway for all of you to see. So Tarnisha asked me to share this message with you. So the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce was asked by the Bradenton Area Convention and Visitors Bureau to take part in the National Arts and Economic Prosperity 6, which is an economic impact study of the nonprofit arts and culture industry. The study is conducted in 360 communities in all 50 states. The last study conducted in 2017 found that the nonprofit arts industry generated $166.3 billion in economic activity, supported 4.6 million jobs, and generated $27.5 billion in government revenue. AEP demonstrates that an investment in the arts provides both cultural and economic benefits. The Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce is one of 50 arts and cultural partners conducting the survey in Manatee County over the next year. We're asking individual visitors to take just the brief survey. It collects important information about audience spending at the local arts and culture events. The findings will provide unique insights on how the arts impact our community. The survey is completely anonymous, and you can participate using your smartphone or a pen and paper. It only takes 4 or 5. And then would you mind providing your feedback on the survey today or tonight? So we will pass around, there are cards that have QR codes on them so that you can scan that and complete the survey. But what I am even more excited about is, oh, Amber Alert. That is not what I am more excited about. So I am very excited that my colleagues are here with me today to be able to share some of our artwork with you and do something that we call a pedagogy that we use with students on field trips to our exhibition, which is visual thinking strategies. So they will be able to really share with you why we think that the arts are so important and so valuable, and a great tool to be able to really teach about the important concepts of diversity, inclusion, kindness, and respect. So I would now, I believe I'm turning it over to Ben and Sheila, or maybe back to you first? Okay.
Actually, it may be Ben and Sheila. If you may have not noticed, I am pinch hitting tonight, so I'm reading everything off the script. But next up, we do have our panel discussion, but if Ben and Sheila come up, all right.
Good evening, and we thank you for having us this evening. Embracing Our Differences is a nonprofit organization based in Sarasota, Florida, that uses the power of the arts and education to expand the consciousness and open the hearts to celebrate diversity of the human family. It accomplishes this through an annual large-scale exhibition for a comprehensive series of education initiatives, programs, and resources. The transformative power of the arts, we educate and aspire to create a better world. Our vision is to teach a world of embracing diversity, kindness and respect differences, and actively reject hatred and prejudice. We are getting ready to celebrate our 20th year of embracing our differences. This year, we will go to 3 different locations. We will start out in the Bayfront Park, as you may have known, there's an exhibition to occur at. It will open on January the 28th. It will then move to Northport, to South County, on March 22nd. And lastly, at State College of Florida, Bradenton campus on April 26th through May 29th. We are super excited and hope that you will take the opportunity to visit the exposition at one of all of these locations. So our exhibition is a global exposition. We have submittals from all over the world. This year, we had approximately 14,000 submittals. That included 45 states, 119 countries, and 424 schools. Normally, we would have even larger numbers, if you can believe it or not. South County was affected by Hurricane Ian, so our students and teachers did not get their exhibits in on time. We also typically get a lot of submittals from Ukraine and Russia, but obviously that didn't happen this year because of the current war. Largely what we do is an education component. I am fortunate enough to lead the exhibition this year in 20th year anniversary, and so excited that we just recently finished selecting the 50 artists' artworks that will be in the show this year. But as I said, a large component of what Embracing Our Differences does do is our education component, where we teach children about kindness, respect for one another, and try to dispel hatred and prejudice. Ben Jewell, my brilliant colleague, does such a wonderful job at teaching the virtual thinking strategy, and he's going to lead you through an exercise that we do with students and docents that take the students through the exhibition to see what they think and feel about the exhibition, the exhibit that's in the park. I'm going to turn it over to Ben. Thank you.
So we've found that in Embracing Our Differences, artwork can be a great portal to have conversations that can feel complicated, can feel insurmountable. They can help open up that door through the artwork. So I'd like to have 3 volunteers from the audience to come join me and participate in a conversation. I have 1 volunteer, 2, 1 more, 3, come on down. Thank you for not making me put on my teacher voice and have to voluntold anyone. So the artwork that we have right in front of us here, and I'll try and do that for you guys so you can all see it, is from our 2021 exhibit, and it's entitled Liberty Enlightening the World. And it was actually our Best in Show piece for the adult category. So this artist received a $1,000 prize, and it's by Arya Badian from Lake Oswego, Oregon. So my 3 volunteers, if you can just take a moment to silently look at this image and take it in for me. So my question to you is, what's going on in this picture? What do you see? Who'd like to go?
I see someone that is fierce, that it's determined. I see power in her eyes. She wants to make a difference.
Sounds like you're drawing our attention to the figure in the center of the piece, and you mentioned a few adjectives: strong, determined, and fierce. What do you see that makes you say determined?
Her eyes. Yes, her eyes. It's just very powerful.
It sounds like you've seen somebody with a similar face before, and you're remembering like that power that you saw in their eyes at the same time, and feeling like you're seeing it here too. What more can we find?
I like what you said, but I also see leadership. That's what I see. It's a lot of strength, leadership, and like she said, you know, that determination. You can actually see that, and even with her lips, there, I just kind of, for me, it's just like a matter-of-fact type of facial expression, and. I see unity as well.
What do you see that makes you say unity?
Well, from this picture, it just looks like it's just not bright, black and brown people. But I see from here, I also see it's just very diverse. It's what I see.
So you're drawing our attention, it sounds like, behind our figure and noticing what you think might be a crowd. And the colors that the artist has used have led you to wonder if this is a crowd of diverse individuals. Wonderful. What more can we find?
Well, I agree with all of your statements. I also see a leader. The fact that she's wearing like the Statue of Liberty is almost like she's leading people into some sort of activity or movement. Her eyebrow, it's also a little like challenging to whoever she's looking at. So I definitely see sort of a younger generation person who's just leading a generation movement. That's what I see.
So I'm hearing you notice some details that are also, I've heard kind of the idea of a leader throughout, and you've added a detail of wondering if this is a younger leader, and also noticing some of the details. You mentioned this object right here, which was reminding you of the Statue of Liberty, it sounded like, and that made you think of, it sounds like, leadership as well, or leading a movement or leading people forward. Did I get that right? Yeah. Can we get a great applause for our 3 volunteers? Thank you all. So that's just an example of what we do every day in the park, whether it's going to be in Bayfront Park in Sarasota, Butler Park in Northport, or the State College of Florida's campus here in Bradenton this coming winter, spring, with student groups who come through our exhibit, and also with adults who come out and want to take in the exhibit and have conversations about what they're seeing in the artwork. So if you find yourself having to have a conversation that you don't know where to start with your colleagues, with your community, with your coworkers, maybe start with art. Maybe find something in that theme that'll help you launch that conversation in a creative way. So thank you so much for having us here tonight. I'm going to pass it over I'm going to call you the Master of Ceremonies. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah and Ben, for that enriching and thought-provoking exercise. And I also would like to encourage all of you to complete the survey that was mentioned earlier. Next up on our program, we are going to begin the panel discussion. With that, I'd like to bring up the host, Kenneth Jones, Director of Hillsborough County MBE SBE.
Tynesha, were we doing a video or?
Okay.
And I am the CEO of Ducon LLC, which is a construction management firm based here in Tampa, Florida. So I went to the University of Florida, I majored in construction. I actually walked on at the University of Florida and got a full scholarship after I was there for 3 years. So Ducon was actually a vision that I had when I was in college. I did my capstone project. I named the company at the time Ducon. It's the first 2 letters of my last name in construction, Ducon.
So my name is O.T. Delancey. I am the Managing Principal of Strategist Project Support Services I'm born and raised in Miami, in Liberty City. I grew up in public housing. I became good at football just by playing on the streets a lot. You played a lot of football. And I got a scholarship from high school to go play college football. I became a two-time All-American as a quarterback and a Hall of Famer at Florida A&M University as a quarterback. When I graduated, I went to play football in the CFL for 4 years. I stopped playing football in 2003 and started focusing on construction.
The things that we particularly face as minority businesses, particularly African-American businesses, getting those relationships, getting the capital, getting the opportunity to prove yourself and to show that, you know what, I can do it as well as anyone else.
When I came into construction as a minority business enterprise, I don't think it's intentionally racist, but I think you have to be intentional about correcting it. It's not something that's gonna just go away.
When you're in charge and somebody walks right past you and goes to someone who is not of color, I know it wasn't my dress or the way I carry myself. I think policies and programs can help companies combat systemic racism.
Companies that employ diversity and inclusion have outperformed companies that ignore it. When you read these studies, you learn they have better reach, they have better connectivity.
Companies that diversify their supplier chain are typically more successful, perform at a higher level. I'm a football guy, so I'll use it in terms of recruiting. If I'm a college that can only recruit from the state of Florida or the Southeast region, my talent is gonna be limited. If I'm a college that can recruit from coast to coast or even internationally, it's gonna allow me to create a more competitive environment within my company, within my workforce.
You have the ability to reach more clients because the client side of our world is becoming more and more diverse as well. You're interfacing with more women as leaders, you're interfacing with more black folks as leaders, you're interfacing with LGBTQ, you're interfacing with more and more professionals who have diverse constituency on their side.
What Construction Inclusion Week allows us to do in such a fast-paced, hustle, bustle, focused environment is it kind of forces us to step back and look at, are we doing it, number one? And if we're doing it, are we doing it well? And even if we're doing it well, can we do it better?
There's no better feeling than running on all cylinders. My experience with DPR, I will say, I've been able to flip the switch on all the cylinders. And that has been a game changer for strategists, for me as a professional, doing what I really love.
Our experience with DPR has been awesome. From a standpoint of just inclusion, treating us as a true partner. There's no reluctancy, there's no, hey, we gotta check this box, or we just have to meet these goals. Once we got on board, it has been total partnership and total commitment to our team from their team. We're looking forward to a great project and looking forward to doing a great job in growing the partnership.
Thank you. Good evening. Ken Jones, the Director of Hillsborough County Government's Minority and Small Business Enterprise Program. And I will be your moderator for this session on procurement. And I will introduce, and as I introduce and call them out, ask our panelists to come up and join me on stage. But before I do that, if you'll allow me 1 minute to do two things. One, my parents, and I learned at an early age always, when someone does something for you, when someone invites you somewhere, to say thank you. So I want to say thank you to the Lakewood Business Association as well as Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to be here this evening. I appreciate that. And then the second thing my parents always told me is whenever you meet and you see family, always say hello. So I want to just say we're not blood family, but this person and I go back for a little while. That's Reverend Manuel Sykes. I just want to personally say hello, Rev, and good to see you again, sir. So as I introduce by name, if you could please come up and join us on stage. Ernie Dubose II. Ernie is a board member of Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. Big pardon. That's you? Okay. So that's going to be Tarnisha Clyott, who's the president, founder, CEO of Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. We also have with us this evening Max Olegario. Max is the Vice President of National Client Acquisition, Executive Global Commercial Banking, Bank of America. All right, good seeing you again. We have Terry Daniel. Terry is the Assistant Vice President, Office Supplier Diversity, University of South Florida. Jamal Sowell. Jamal is the President of Business Solutions, Indelible Solutions, and Jamal is also the former President and CEO of Enterprise Florida. So welcome to our panel, and we're going to have a oh, help me introduce yourself.
That's okay. Brian Yarborough, Business Unit Leader for DPR Construction here in Central Florida.
All right, thank you, Brian. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
So let's give our panel a round of applause. So I have a series of questions that I'm going to ask and encourage each of our panelists to engage in the conversation. And I'll probably start it out directing it to one of the panelists in particular. But after that, anyone else who would like to add to that conversation, to that question, please feel free to do so. Let's start with Max. So Max, what DE&I initiatives has your company or organization implemented and have been truly effective? And if you can please share some specifics.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ken, for the question, and thank you to the Minnesota Black Chamber and the Lakewood Ranch Business Association for inviting me first and foremost. Well, Bank of America, as an organization, we have 200,000 plus employees, and diversity and inclusion is very important to us. I mean, it's something that we follow and something that we really pride ourselves in on a global scale. So when I think about an initiative that well, actually, two initiatives come to mind within the organization, two that are very close to me. One, initially, we have within our organization what we call employee networks. We have 11 employee networks, 250 chapters globally, that the sole intention there is to truly embrace our diversity and really provide an opportunity for our associates to have a safe place to work, to bring their whole selves to work. And so I think, the goal there within these employee networks is to, one, provide professional development opportunities, also provide a way to connect with the community, and also provide an opportunity for them to grow within the organization. We know it's effective because within our employee satisfaction survey, the associates that are involved in this do score 5% higher within the survey. So that's one thing. Second, externally, back in 2019, I'm sorry, I'm taking up most of the time here. Back in 2019, within our organization, 3 key cities for Bank of America, Jacksonville, Atlanta, and Charlotte. Within our supplier diversity division, within our business banking division, we elected to host what we call listening sessions with black-owned businesses within those cities. And the goal there being to better understand the needs of black-owned businesses. And so out of that came what we call our Black Business Initiative, which is a national initiative within Bank of America, and we set up an operating model whereby in key cities within the bank, we've provided we've started programs whereby we provide subject matter expertise, we provide connectivity to local business owners, so that they can grow, they can thrive, and we've done that here in Tampa. Tarnisha and Ducon are one of our members of our cohort. We have a 10-member cohort that we started earlier this year, and it's been a 10-month program, and we provided subject matter expertise on topics such as supplier diversity, cybersecurity, growing your business through financing, access to capital, marketing your business, topics such as that. And our last session will be in a couple of weeks where we talk about creating generational wealth. And so it's when we talk about if it's effective or not, I hope it's effective. It's something that it's impacted me, and I hope we've made an impact on these businesses because it's something within the bank that we look to continue for years to come.
Would anyone else like to add to that question? What initiative has your company organization implemented, and has it been truly effective? If you could speak to that.
Sure. So Terry Daniel with the University of South Florida. Thank you so much for having us here today. We have, as a university, realized that diversity, equity, and inclusion is essential to our success. On our faculty, staff, and student side, but also on the business operation side of the university as well. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the business side because that is my focus. So I lead the university's supplier diversity initiative across all of our campuses. And so our program is relatively new. So we started our supplier diversity initiatives at the end of 2017, and there was literally nothing in place. When I was brought to the university, we didn't have a staff, we didn't have a strategic plan, basically no team around to support our supplier diversity initiatives. So everything that you see related to supplier diversity at the University of South Florida has really kind of happened and ramped up in the last 5 or so years. That tells you right there the commitment to the university and to our leadership around this initiative. So we've implemented, and I'll just talk about a couple things because I want to give our other panelists some time to speak about their organizations as well. But within the Office of Supplier Diversity, there are many, many different things that we wanted to do to make sure, first of all, that we were increasing our spend with diverse-owned suppliers. So when I walked into the door, our percentage of utilization was pretty poor. We were at about 4.2% utilization. In our strategic plan that was developed in 2017, we outlined a goal of 13 to 20% of what we call our addressable spend. And we are at 13% today. And I'm so proud to be able to say that. But guess what? We have a really long way to go to get to where we really want to be, right? So what does that look like? It took a lot of legwork, working with all of our different colleges and departments, which are extremely numerous. It took a lot of legwork. We have 15,000 employees across USF. 2,000 of those have what we call purchasing cards or P cards. So they have the ability to swipe for purchases for basically anything to support their colleges and departments. And so you have to create a strategy to reach those users that are very low dollar level spend as well. But the first area that I, coming into the organization, really wanted to focus on was our construction spend. That is where we were spending the majority of our dollars. And so the first thing that we did was we created a Tier 2 utilization program so that we could support the growth and development of our smaller businesses in the community to come along as subcontractors on our major construction projects. And so we've continued to focus on that. We've continued to invest in businesses. We launched a mentor protege program similar to Bank of America 2 years ago. And boy, has it exceeded my expectations. It has been phenomenal. The second cohort will be graduating on October 28th. I'll give you a little bit more information about that later. We have 12 firms in this cohort in the second year. But I think the overall strategy is really to not just talk about it, but to be about it and to do it. And it takes a lot of hard work, tenacity. Sometimes when they see Terry Daniel coming, everybody's not excited. I don't know why. Thank you. But sometimes people don't always want to change what has been in place for a very, very long time. And I will just say, I think that all of us in this room, we are change agents. And it may take some time, right? But as it relates to supplier diversity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, you have to stay at it. And so that's what we are diligent about doing.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. And you mentioned a heavy portion of that is in the areas of construction. And so I'd like to segue that to our construction-related firms that are bookending us here. If DPR and if you're able to speak on behalf of DuCon, if you could speak to what your respective firms are doing in the area of supplier diversity, engaging not only the relationships, but converting those relationships into contracts. So if you could speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
You want to start, or you want me to start?
Flip a coin.
Let's go.
Let's go.
I'll start because
Okay.
it'll segue right into you, Brian. From the smaller subcontractor side, I wear multiple hats, so that's my day-to-day operations. I'm the marketing, community relations, project manager, executive at DuCon Construction. We're really proud company, African-American owned. You saw our owner up there, Ernie DeBose. And with that, we have opportunities to increase the younger or either, thank you, Jesus, I saw John come through. I had to stop. Thank you. But at any rate, we have an opportunity to grow younger subs as well as growing their capacity. Even as a small general contracting firm, we still have the obligation to reach down and to bring others up. So we're intentional as we grow and as we are on larger construction projects. Our range starts from $500,000 and we go up to $15 million, and that's self-performing. That's huge for an African-American owned firm. So with that, we're bringing those smaller firms up, and I can just tee up to Hannah Ave, Brian. We are over 2 buildings there, that's fleet and facilities. And we have one electrical trade that's there. He has over $1 million contract. That's an African-American owned firm, $1 million contract. That's unheard of, and especially in our area, in our region. So that's something that we were able to match, a matchmaking type situation to bring that firm up. Now, our spend or our award on that is a nice size, obviously, right? So we're not just being greedy and taking that all for ourselves. We're reaching down to grow others' capacity. And those are the savvy things that we have to do in this, all of us in this together. And I'll just segue right into Brian, and he can speak about some partnerships that we do together.
Thank you, Tarnisha. And Ken, I too was taught to say thank you. So, Ms. Tarnisha, thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight in front of you, to have the opportunity to kind of give my voice, my perspective. And change doesn't happen without the conversations. And so have loved the word intentionality. Have been hearing that a lot lately as we've been celebrating Construction Inclusion Week as a construction management firm. And I think we live and die by our trade partners, right? We subcontract out the majority of the work on the projects that we're hired to do and manage those trades. And so a lot of our supplier diversity efforts have been focused around growing those minority businesses, providing them opportunities, giving them the chance to grow. What we've learned on the Hannah Avenue project is that it's time for a mind shift. It's time to focus not only on those trade partners performing the electrical work, the plumbing work, the masons, but to look at our CM partners, right? And so I think as institutions like the University of South Florida, Ms. Terry, some of the healthcare systems in this market, right? We've seen this trend over the last 10, 15, 20 years for a non-diverse firm to partner with a diverse firm and to bring them to the table in these pursuits. Went through the proposal process last week and was one of 4 firms that interviewed for a project. Every single firm had a diverse partner in the room with them. So that process has worked, but really, I think where we saw this opportunity to be these change agents that we spoke of at Hannah is to not only grow our trade partners, but to grow those CM partners. And so doing it differently there, whereas traditionally just bringing in those diverse firms, being a part of our team and supplementing our overall project management staff. It might be with a young project engineer. It might be with a young superintendent. They're working alongside our teams, but it's quite honestly, it's been limited. And it stifled their growth, if we're being honest about that. And so carving out these major components, these two structures to DUCON, the parking garage has been released to Strategist Project Support Services, and they're overseeing that, and they are wholly managing that work. They're not just a member of our team, but they are going through and owning the pre-construction process. Right, Donald from DUCON is sending out those invitations to bid, sending out the advertisements, collecting those proposals, meeting with trade partners, leveling bids. The project engineers, the superintendents are out there planning the work. The contracts that are being issued to those electrical contractors are being issued by DUCON. And so those are firms that, because of their capacity, because of maybe their experience, are a little leery to quite honestly work with a billion-dollar global company and wouldn't have had that opportunity. And so I think really the paradigm shift that we're seeing is how can we grow these CM firms, provide greater opportunities to the trade partners because they're contracting directly with other diverse businesses. And it's my hope that in 10 years, I'm no longer partnering with DUCON, but I'm competing against, and I've got a new partner. So we've really seen a lot of traction with that, and it's taken a lot of courage by everybody involved because it's been difficult. There's folks that question it because it's not what we've done, and so I think it's that intentionality that we speak of, and we've got to stay the course.
Just to add to that, the one thing I wanted to add, we started as an internal team with DUCON. We sat, and when we were approached with the deal to come on board, we were discussing, is this going to be another partnership where we're going to just do the bare minimum, just having staffed on the project, not really growing our capacity. When we looked at the deal, we understood what that would do for us. So I said 15 million is our cap where we can self-perform and then do that job without any partners. Before that, we were an $8 million cap. So if you could see 8 million, 15 million, we're growing our capacity. So we're able to get bonded at $15 million. So those are the type of goals, those are the type of strategies we have to have into any type of construction or any type of procurement deal. We have to be intentional about growing businesses. It's good for the community at large.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, you took my segue. Both of you were speaking quite a bit about growing. So growing businesses. So we've talked about, if I can break it down to these three levels, engaging supplier diversity, engaging with a diverse supplier base, not only engaging with them, embracing them, but growing them. So how can we, and I'm going to come to you, Jamal, how can we, and if you know some specific examples, how can we help grow these businesses so that they are increasing their capacity to, as Tarnisha just mentioned, now maybe instead of a sub, they're able to be a prime on an opportunity. But they also move to that next level where the ownership may look at that as an opportunity for generational wealth, transfer of ownership, other partnership opportunities. Can you speak to that?
Definitely. Hey, so I was born and raised in Florida, sixth-generation native. My family is from Orlando, south side of St. Pete, Palmetto. So when it comes to Florida, I know it very well. So I went to UF. I was student body president, board of trustees at 21 years old, went to the Marine Corps, captain of the Marine Corps, went to Afghanistan, chief of staff to the port, and I was the Florida Secretary of Commerce. I said that to say I had to understand the way entities such as UF, the port, the state of Florida, counties work. I had a different network than the people who were in charge. My home network were people from the backwoods of Florida, people from Southside St. Pete, people from Palmetto, Newtown, Sarasota. And my network was different, and because of that, when I would walk into rooms, there wasn't a level of comfortability because I didn't come from, big money Sarasota or rich areas in Bradenton. That just wasn't my background. And I realized that people will do business with people they know because they're comfortable, but also they will not take the risk because you're not in their network or you haven't been around long enough. Perfect example, when I was at the port, someone come out of the blue, I want a contract. I'm like, nobody here knows you. We've never seen you before. So at the end of the day, you may have a good product, but then stuff goes left, you'll go back to your home state where you're from. And now I have to deal with this mess that you started. And that is what I tell people. Florida is a transient state, people from everywhere around the world, but at the same time, stuff goes wrong, we still will then have to work with it. And so I tell people, one, join the Chamber of Commerce, join different groups, even hire an advocate for you to tell you where you're supposed to go to when it comes time for the contract. When it comes time for the RFP, more than likely, they already have in their mind who they want. So the fact that you are just finding out about the RFP means that you've already lost the battle. That's just what it is. Okay, so here's an example. You have someone who in here has a small business. Okay, a few people. You have person A, B, and C. Person A maybe have a great product. Person B has a great product. Person C has a decent product, not as good, but you know them very well. And if you know them very well, who are you going to pick? Because you can at least check the person C and say, hey, we need you to get it together. And I know you, and if stuff goes left, I'm going to talk to your family, I'm going to talk to your friends, and I'm going to make sure that things are in order. So you have to see it through that lens. So a lot of the things that I would see in the state in my role as Secretary of Commerce, I would see women-owned companies, minority businesses. Hey, I have an idea. I want to do work with the state. I'm like, well, have you been around? First of all, are you registered in the state of Florida to do procurement? And most of them say, oh, I need to start. Okay, that means you have an uphill battle. Who is representing you to get you in the room? Some people hire lobbyists, some people hire advocates. You need somebody to get you in the room who that is their job to get you in the room. Because to have a favor as a friend, yes, that's cool and everything, but that friend may not have the time to get you in the right spaces all the time. And they say, well, I don't want to spend the money. Well, other people are doing that to get in the room, to make sure that they get contracts from the government, and whether it's local or state, and that's just how the process works, because somebody has to get you at the table. Because if you're not at the table, you are on the menu. So as we think about strategically doing business, it doesn't matter the administration, Republican, Democrat, this is business. And that's what I started to see when I was in state government. And I hope to give you that knowledge from my perspective, from all of the entities that I have done in the past. So as you think about growing the business, you have to have somebody to represent you, who that is their job to get you at the table. But also you have to understand that the overall process, people will do things that they're comfortable with, who they've seen around at the Chamber of Commerce events, at the events, to be there for a long period of time, just not a Johnny-come-lately who wants a contract because you have a good product. So as you start to think about that, I hope to be of assistance to you, because that's how we started at Indelible, a management consulting firm, and we do work all around the state of Florida, but we did that because we were patient. We made those relationships, but we were a constant figure. So when contracts came out, they say, well, there's somebody we trust, and there's somebody who will do a good job.
Thank you. So relationships, understanding what the respective processes are and involves. Coming to the end of our session, what I'm going to do is ask, and I'm going to start on the other end, Tanisha, and ask you and work down the line. Any last comments? But before we do that, I'd like to see if there's one, maybe two questions from the floor. One, maybe two questions. Go right ahead.
What are we doing about affordable housing? Am I at the right meeting? I haven't heard anybody mention anything about affordable housing.
Yeah. That is a great question. This session's on supplier diversity. I'm not sure if the next one is on housing. Is one of the later sessions on affordable housing? Okay, so hold that question. It's a good question. So hold that question. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
How are you seeking the talent that provides diversity? So maybe some of the, excuse me, I'm from Palmetto, Bradenton myself. How are you going into the woods, so to speak, into these parts of the community to find the talent that could be moving forward?
That is like the best question ever. Thank you. So we have various ways of connecting with the community, and one of them is partnering with organizations like the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. They are the boots on the ground. You know, my team and we're a very, very small team, and we're juggling like a bowling ball, an egg, and a little kickball or a golf ball all at the same time. So it's hard for us to do everything. So that is why we have to rely on our partners in the community. We have similar relationships with other organizations that sit right in the Tampa area and the St. Pete area as well. So that is one of the ways that we build our supplier base to diversify what we're doing in all areas. We also encourage our business community. We also partner with like the chambers as well, like the Tampa Bay Chamber and all of those organizations. But we also encourage our supplier community to register and get on our database, because we send a lot of things out electronically. So we want you to know about all of our upcoming opportunities. Supplier Diversity Day, which is October 28th. If you're not registered, you should be. For our corporations in the room, if you don't have a booth, please see me. We have right now almost 500 people registered for this session. This is our premier event where we connect our supplier community to all of our colleges and departments. Right now, we have about 15 USF colleges and departments that will be there to meet you. We are trying to connect you, meet you, build those relationships to see who you are. And so that is how we go about connecting with our businesses right here in our community.
Thank you, Terry. So, go ahead. Last question. Go right ahead, sir.
Self-serving, but hopefully other people have the same kind of question. So, my name's Bill Woods. I'm at New College of Florida. I did have diversity responsibilities for the first couple of years. I'm now leaving New College. But I would love to know, can I get Ms. Daniel and and Brian, I didn't catch your last name. I would love to be able to know, would you be willing to let me, I'm going to be meeting with our president tomorrow, and I would love to see New College take the same kind of initiative that USF has taken to get started with looking at supplier diversity as a key area of focus. We've done good diversity work in a number of areas. I just hit a brick wall on supplier diversity piece. And so, will you sign up? Will you come on with me? And Brian, you're also, I didn't get your last name, sir, but I think if I get the preview in front of my president, in front of my CFO, maybe we get something started.
I would love to. I can't do it tomorrow. But yes, absolutely. I will give you my personal cell phone. Call me, we can discuss it, and I'll come down and whatever you need, 100% absolutely.
Thank you, sir. So Tarnisha, and we'll work down the panel towards myself. Closing remarks on procurement, supplier diversity that you'd like to share with the group.
I guess the last thing that I will leave, and I think this would be something that Ernie would say, we just have to be intentional about how we're doing business, and the fact that we have to travel outside of Manatee County. He and I both live in Manatee County, and we travel outside of Manatee County to do business, and that's the unfortunate thing. Even with the connections that I have here, I feel like I have a great foot in the Manatee County, Sarasota area, and we don't do enough business here. And I have to drive my daughter to St. Stephen's, drive in Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, Polk County to do business. Literally, I'm on the back rows trying to get somewhere to do business. And I think that's a disservice to my tax-paying dollars. And that's something that we have to change.
Very well said. You know, when I think supplier diversity, and this is coming from a banker. I'm sorry?
Hold the microphone up
Oh.
closer.
Can you hear me now? Yes. All right, thank you. I never had anybody tell me they couldn't hear me, but that's fine. When I think supply diversity, and coming from a business man, someone that works in a bank, someone that deals with companies all the time, you know, it just makes economic sense. And those companies that commit to diversifying their supply chain tend to do better, tend to profit more. And I look at those companies that establish supplier diversity arms. There's two things that really, in my opinion, make it successful. One, a commitment from the top. You have to have management that is bought into it, that's passionate about it, that's willing to oversee it and stand by it. And then two, you need to have a mechanism in place where you're tracking it, and you need to make sure that it's something that you're looking at to ensure that you're doing it effectively. And you know, it's important. It's very important to small businesses, and it's how small businesses grow, and something that you know, we're truly committed to at Bank of America as well.
Awesome. I'm going to go a little bit different direction. I know that there are a lot of businesses in here, but business to business relationships are essential. And I will just say, raise your hand if you know what allyship is. Okay. Allyship, in Terry's definition, is using your power, your influence, and your ability to create opportunities for someone else. Right? Let me say that one more. I feel like I'm in church a little bit. Allyship is using your power, your influence, and your ability to create opportunity for someone else. Is that always easy? No. Have there been days when I wanted to throw the towel in and quit and say, I can get a job anywhere. I've been doing this a really long time. I have a really long resume. But it's about commitment. And it's about allyship. And using the seat that you are in to fight for opportunities for other people. Right? So if you take anything away today, as business owners, even if it's not a space that you play in, if you know someone else who does that specific service or sells that specific product, take time to make an introduction to individuals, maybe like myself, within organizations who could potentially use them for a contract. You use their service. If they have a printing service and you need business cards or whatever, B2B business is huge. It is huge. But for those major organizations in the room, there's a study that came from the University of Washington that says for every $1 million every dollar that you spend with a diverse business, it's a $1.2 million economic impact. Think about the impact that you can have as a major organization that makes a commitment to utilize diverse-owned suppliers. Thank you.
So I have my wife here tonight, and when we first met, I said the only rule that I have is just don't Google me. I told her that. I said, hey, I'm not married. I haven't been arrested, so there's nothing bad out there. Just don't Google me, because I just don't want to talk about politics, business. I just don't talk about it. I want to get to know you, and vice versa, as a person without any preconceived notion. So that was the only rule. And she didn't do it for a while. So because I would test her to ask questions and everything, and she just had no idea what I did for work. I said that to say is that because that relationship building was important, because for businesses, as you build that relationship to have that record, the employers like USF, like Bank of America, they're going to Google you and see, are you legit or not? Have you been certified or not? Are you officially MBE or women-owned business through the official federal or state and county procurement processes? So as you think about doing business with USF, New College, Bank of America, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to bring you on. If you don't have an expertise, that's okay. You can sub somebody else. If you don't have all what it takes, ask them, what do I need in the future to get this procurement, for me to land this RFP? So with my experiences being on the receiving side with the big entity, now I'm on the asking side to get the RFPs. That has been the biggest thing, is to have the relationships with people before it comes out, before that choice is made. So when it's made, you will be able to then land something officially for the future. And even if not, you can ask, what did I do wrong, and how can I work with you more in the future? And that's really how you're going to be able to build wealth for your companies and really make a difference in economic development, to have jobs in your communities, to employ people who need those jobs the most.
Thank you.
Y'all are a tough act to follow. I feel like you're looking at my notes. I think a couple key things that I heard tonight that I want to kind of key in. The first, the question about workforce development. Just quickly, I think DPR Construction unique in that in our construction business, nearly 8,000 employees. Nearly half of those employees are in craft trades. We're a self-performing general contractor performing trades from drywall, concrete, Division 7 waterproofing, doors, frames, and hardware. And so 90% of that workforce is diverse. But really what that does is it provides some unique opportunities to leadership within the company, some non-traditional paths, right? Starting from an apprenticeship program, working your way up through the trades to perhaps a drywall foreman, to a superintendent, a salaried superintendent in a large project. And so that's just not what we have traditionally seen in our industry. And so, you know, working with organizations like whether it's CareerSource or CDC in Tampa. But then I think beyond that, the key thing that my takeaway from tonight is just that emphasis on relationships, right? So Tarnisha's talking about how much she's got to spend on the road. And, you know, I think inversely, we're a business that, especially in Central Florida, has been focused kind of on that Tampa Bay region. And so looking at opportunities here, how we can further that relationship with Tarnisha, start to come, you know, across the Skyway a little bit, find some opportunities down here in the Minnesota counties. And I think, Jamal, excellent point on the RFP. If you've waited till the RFP, it's too late. Let us come in and kind of understand the services, know those capabilities. And then I think the other, you know, key takeaway for business owners here in the group tonight is, yes, we are a construction service provider. But Terry, to your point about P cards, to your point about every dollar spent, there's a lot of things that we purchase as an organization in the day-to-day course of business that doesn't contribute to the sticks and bricks in a building. And so I think passing that information along to our project teams to understand that, hey, we may be doing a safety barbecue or a luncheon during Construction Inclusion Week, to take that moment to celebrate our on-site workforce. And that may be a $1,000 or $2,000 kind of catering budget for the day. That's quite honestly kind of a drop in the hat on a $100 million project. But if you go to a local business and provide them that opportunity to serve that meal versus some national chain, that can have a tremendous impact on the neighborhoods in which you're working. So I think just looking for opportunities, being, you know, courageous and willing to step outside the box, and I love that allyship. Absolutely fantastic. I'm going to steal that. So thank you, Terry.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking our panel. So as we transition to the next session, I'll just add my wrap up. We heard a couple of key words: relationships, partnerships, allyship. I'll add 3 more words to that. A lot of these minority and small firms, they're able, they're capable, and they're available. So with that said, I'll turn it over to the next session.
Thank you, Ken, for leading that discussion. Our next session will be led by our president, Tarnisha Client, from the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce.
I guess I'm a little behind. I guess I didn't realize that. I'm going to go ahead and ask our panelists to come up, please. I don't have my notes. Bishop Sykes. Ms. Karen Davis. Mr. James Hurd. Come on down. I don't know what I did with my binder. Oh my gosh. Yes, thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. Praise you. Notes are important. Thank you. I don't know where my Raina is. I've been looking for her this whole time. Arthur, can you hear me that? That's actually what I need right there. Sorry, that's okay. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and quickly introduce our guests. Bishop Manuel Sykes is the founder, president of Bethel Community Foundation. Mr. James Hurd is the principal of Horizons Academy with the School District of Manatee County. Mrs. Karen Davis Pritchett is the vice president of Supply Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for NPATH. We'll go ahead and kick off our panel. As you all know, we have the Stop Woke law that was presented as Florida House Bill 7, Senate Bill 148. The actual words were wrongs to our children, our kids, and employees. I want to give a definition for woke. The past tense of awake, alert to injustice in society, especially racism. We need to stay angry and stay woke. We're going to go down a little bit deeper about what it all kind of entails. And just briefly, I just want to just highlight a couple of things in the Stop Woke Act. It prohibits workplace training and school instructions that teaches the individuals to inherently racism and sexism. It also discusses race and gender and the national origin. It also talks about how to bear personal responsibility and must feel guilty, anguish, and also forms psychological distress. With that all in mind, we're going to go ahead and lead into our discussion. Bishop, I'll actually start with you. In the light, or actually I'll start with Ms. Karen, start with the ladies first. In the light of Stop Woke law, how can your organization and businesses still move the DE&I forward in the workplace?
Thank you so much, Tarnisha, and for the invitation to be here, as well as the Lakewood Ranch Business Association. Right now, that law is being challenged, and there has been a lot of conversation in the workplace and space about whether or not we can still have these DEI conversations, and the answer is absolutely yes. It is really important that we continue to look at diversity. What is the representation of who we're serving? Who's the representation in our staff and our colleagues? Also, what is the equitable practice that we're doing with our policies, with retention and recruitment of our colleagues, as well as inclusion? Are we building a culture where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued? So there is a lot within the DEI scope that's broader than the Stop Woke Act. The Stop Woke Act really focuses in on some what I like to call trigger words, words that they say make people feel uncomfortable, such as privilege, systematic racism, unconscious and conscious bias. But DEI is larger than those trigger words. And also it is important to note that the Stop Woke Act only is triggered if you say that a training is mandatory.
Great point. Mr. Hurd, I'll go a little segue over to you. Even as a principal and a leader, how do you implement something along those lines as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion with your staff, with your students, and all of those things? How do you do that? How do you approach that now?
Sure. Thank you also, Tanisha, for having me. It's my privilege to be here. I'm in a unique position in terms of being an educator in this room tonight, so it's kind of an interesting perspective for me. I feel like what I have to say is that our education, our public education system is really preparing the workforce that we're talking about. And so we have to make sure that we are preparing students for multiple paths towards whatever their future is going to be, whether it's going to be a trade, whether it's going to be blue, white, gray collar, whatever that is, we have to provide a clear pathway for that. That sometimes is difficult to do with restrictions and what we're asked, the thin line that we're asked to walk as educators. We're asked to not overstep boundaries in terms of getting beyond our responsibility as educator and falling into the role of counselor or falling into the role of parent, although you had best believe that on any given day we are playing the role of parent and we're playing the role of, whomever else, counselor. So the challenge for us becomes making sure that our staff is sensitive to all the needs that students arrive to school with. We have to be prepared for the whole child. We have to be aware that their experiences vary greatly. We have to be sensitive to the fact that needs are met, are not met, are partially met, are mismet. I'm not sure what that means, but they're coming to us in so many different fashions and so many different conditions that for us, it has to be some open conversation about the varied experiences, the varied perspectives. I won't go a whole lot, Tanisha, into the impact of some of the language in the Stop Woke Act, but I will tell you that Ben's example at the beginning of this evening was all about teaching to look at something and gain or share perspective. Isn't that what education is? So what might be a little bit frightening to us as we're trying to open the minds of young people to possibility, opportunity, pathways, and their best futures, we kind of have to be careful about how we present those pathways, but we cannot give up the privilege of teaching perspective. I think that's what we do, is we prep folks for perspective.
Bishop Sykes, I think I'm going to ask you some similar question for that. You are the pastor of Bethel Community, also the headmaster over at Bethel Community Foundation in the school. So something similar, you have a flock that you're leading, as well as overseeing the school. So that same question is offered to you, sir.
Well, from a religious perspective, one thing that Jesus said, Jesus said, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. I think to begin with, Governor DeSantis is legislating denial. From the time I've been in school, and I've been in school a lot, we have to start with the source of beliefs and principles. If you want to stop children and others from feeling uncomfortable with subject matter, then you have to make sure the subject matter is accurate. It's very difficult to say that a child should not be made to feel bad when he's looking in a textbook that nobody looks like him, when he's been denied the presence in the Civil War, the World War II, World War I, all of the things in which African Americans and other minorities have participated. So to say now that to bring these things up is offensive to other people, it's offensive to me. Because this systematic denial of individuals and our contributions to this country is an affront to our humanity. So we have to start on the premise that we're all human. Secondarily, W.D. Du Bois talked about a collective consciousness, meaning that the weight of racism and the hostilities do not begin and end in a generation. They impact us from the time we come into this, from the time we are born. We are impacted by the collective histories of our people in this United States. And so to tell me not to feel that is tantamount to telling me not to be human. Thirdly, if you look at the duplicitous way in which he described the law, he said that critical race theory is one of those theories that distort history. But in a caveat, he said that what DEI teaches is like Holocaust denial and other theories that distort history. So what he's trying to say is that a distortion of history is to deny the Holocaust. But in the same breath, to correct history is an affront to the people who had a big part in what's going on now. Do I blame the current generation for what happened in the past? No. But if the plane was built in 1918 and you're flying it, you are still utilizing the advantages and the mechanism that has been put in place. And I believe that what real education does is it makes people think. It makes people realize, you know, that was wrong. Nobody's asking anybody to feel bad. We're just asking you don't perpetuate what has been bad, and to recognize, if you're going to really see diversity as it is, that you're dealing with people who have been affected by the past. And in America that's evolved, and in America that's humanistic, we've got to accept that diversity is not only in skin color, but also in history, also in advantages. And if we don't do that, we dehumanize each other, whether or not we do it in theory or books or just by saying, I don't see color. Because God is my witness. When I see the world, I see all kinds of colors. And you can't tell me in good faith that you don't. That's my take on it. And I preach that. And in my school, I assure that the curriculum is truth. And when the curriculum is true and accurate to history and scholarly pursuit, you don't have to tell people whether or not to feel bad. You show them the facts. And the facts then, if you are a person of goodwill, is going to cause you to look inward and say, I don't want to perpetuate a system that has been unfair to other people.
Great point. In your words, define DE&I. We'll ask every panelist to answer that question.
So I think for me, diversity really is that representation, and it goes beyond skin color. It's how we learn, it's how we think, it's our experiences, it's in who we love, and where we live, and how did we grow up. That's diversity. Inclusion really is intentional. We've heard that word a lot tonight. And if you're going to do DEI correctly, you must be intentional. And so when we think about equity, equity requires us to pause, to stop. In our last panel, I think it was Terry who said, you know, things are changing. You know, we get into a cycle, and you've never done it this way before, you never asked this question before in 40 years. But equity tells us that we need to stop and pause, figure out what is different, not just identify that difference, but seek to understand why is it different and is it causing a barrier. Then take that information and let that information then inform our policies, our practices, our engagement, and how we interact with each other, and then how do we serve our community. That's what equity is. And then inclusion, that you see me. Like Pastor Sykes said, if you say to me, Karen, I don't see your color, then you must have your eyes closed. Because I walk in this world as a Black woman with lots of different intersections. And so I think as a business, it's really important that we look at our culture. Because we can have all the diversity in the world, and we can have all of the recruitment in the world. But when they walk through those doors to do your mission and your vision, just like at Empath Health, if I don't feel seen and valued, and if you're not seeking to intentionally leverage my skill to make me feel that I am a part of your mission and what I do every single day is important, then we have not reached an inclusive environment. That's what DEI is for me.
Beautifully said. I would suggest that diversity for me is really just seeing the total picture, every player in every position and every perspective. In terms of the equality, I would suggest that that's our paying attention to opportunity and pathways and making sure that they are accessible to other folks. There's an intentionality, a thread of intentionality that runs through each of these, of course. So intentionally making sure that we're seeing all players from all positions, intentionally making sure that every opportunity and every pathway is available as they should be. And that means even moving some obstacles or building some stairs. And then, of course, inclusion, as far as I'm concerned, is simply that the full experience from the development of a product, whether that product is a widget or a child, is considered from conception to development to the deployment of it and to the integration of it into the larger society. So I just think it is the full experience being taken seriously and intentionally from beginning to end.
The preacher in me refers to a metaphor called the body of Christ. And Paul talks about we're one body, many members, each of which has a function. I can't say to the hand, I have no need of you. Because a body without its working members is incomplete no matter how it looks. If you stump your toe at night, you're not having a heart attack, but you'll sure make your body will let you know something has invaded your nervous system. And so when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I look at it like, how many of y'all ever been on a basketball court and nobody picked you? They might have not picked you because you were short. They made the assumption because you're short, you can't add value to my team. Whenever you're in a situation where you are preempted from participating in what is a whole, that flies in the face of diversity. The world would be very boring without color, without species. And so it is in the human family. If we don't understand that our differences make us better and beautiful, then we have devolved back to a world that's without form and void. And then inclusion, as you said, is intentional. And that's what DeSantis is saying, should not be intentional. What actually happens is when we are intentional about inclusivity and being diverse, then we don't have to be intentional about telling people what they're not doing. When you include me, I don't have to knock on the door and tell you, you close the door on me. And so simple logic makes diversity and inclusion a human trait. And as it said, I don't believe racism is inherent, it's not in DNA, but the society in which we live enforces that concept to the degree that you can barely tell the difference. And so if we're going to do this right, then we have to look at everybody as being valuable in their own right. One of the things I study is multiple intelligences. Multiple intelligences is when we look at the learning style of children and recognize how much of a disadvantage it is when you try to make a child that's auditory visual, or when you try to make a child that's visual tactile. And when we put them in an educational system that is cookie cutter, and then try to rate them based upon the same curriculum and the same approach to teaching and learning, we're doing them a disfavor, and we cannot conclude that we are being diverse nor inclusive.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and thank our panelists for being here, and we're going to segue right into our third and final panel. We'll ask that Ms. Dawn comes up and lead the segue. I'm sorry, MC, trying to make up a time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dawn Stanhope. I'm the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs here in Manatee County. And when Tarnisha learned that in a prior life up in Manchester, New Hampshire, I actually worked in affordable housing development as a career, she said, "Oh, I got a job for you tonight." So I'm kind of going back about 20 years now and thinking about my days in affordable housing and the conversations that we were having, which sadly 20 years later, not much progress has been made. Let's just face it and be real about it. Regardless of where you live, I think. You know, there's been some good highlights and some things happening, but we can do much more. So we could probably spend the whole night talking about this particular subject. And there are conversations like this that are happening pretty much everywhere that you turn. And so we're not here tonight to solve all these issues. They're deep, they're wide-ranging, there's a lot of complexity to it. But what we hope you'll come away with tonight is maybe some change in perspective, some ideas of ways that we can link together and create some really positive momentum in our community, and even just to share the information with others that you know that have that influence, that have that power, that ability to create positive impact and change in our community. So I'm going to ask our panelists to come on up on stage. We're going to do very quick introductions and then get right into some conversation. So I'd like to call up Aaron Miner, who's the CEO of Harvest House, John Thaxton, the Senior Vice President of the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, David Loanya, the Director of Real Estate at Tampa Housing Authority, Diana Shoemaker, the former CEO of Manatee County Habitat for Humanity, and Chris Johnson, the CEO of the Suncoast Partnership. Thank you for being here for this conversation. Since the Great Recession, the gap between black and white homeownership rates has grown wider than it's been in more than 50 years. These discrepancies aggravate our nation's growing wealth inequality as well, because one way that you build wealth is through housing. In recent years, these problems have intensified both in the rental and homeownership markets, and BIPOC residents bear those burdens disproportionately. There is a value of applying a racial equity lens to housing policy analysis relating specifically to evictions. Although eviction affects people of all races and ethnicities, in some communities, especially those that are densely populated and where home prices are rising, like right here, it affects our Black and our Hispanic people at much greater rates. And by the way, these are the populations that will be greater and larger than our white community and already are changing into that trajectory. So if we're not addressing this, we're already way behind and it's only going to get worse. So again, we can't fix it all here tonight, especially in a very limited time frame. But I'd like to ask our panelists to just weigh in a little bit on some things that you're seeing based on your own perspective. So the first question is, what do you see as future challenges that may further impact housing in underserved communities? We've highlighted a little bit, but let's go a little further on it. And who would like to take that question first? Diana?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to be here today. You know, we're excited about all the growth that's happening in our community with housing. You know, lots of people coming in. But we've got to admit that with all that growth, there are communities that are being affected. And especially recently with the rising housing costs, and now the impact of Ian on our communities, the concern I have and continue to have is that we are going to be starting, the people who are looking for housing and can't find the housing they want now are going to start looking for housing they can find in communities that have traditionally not been where they have been buying. And my concern is that we're going to see this trickle down into communities that have been underserved with housing that people will buy up and will transition and end up affecting the market for that community and for our whole community. So it's those kinds of things. And when we start also to think about the climate impact of climate change, coastal communities that are going to be starting to be concerned about living there start to move inward. Some of our internal communities that have been underserved will be the ideal place for people to buy up inexpensive or less expensive housing. And we're going to further create pressure for those underserved communities.
I think the conversation we're having tonight, of course, about DEI, specifically to our Black and Brown communities, I think a future challenge that we'll have, it's been a challenge since the inception of this nation, is the perpetuation of segregation because of underlying fears in public policy and predatory lending. And not to simplify this, but the fact of the matter is this is a very complex issue. But really, it all ends up in our lap. Because if we're not doing anti-racist work individually and in our nonprofits and our corporations, these underlying fears in public policy and in lending and all that won't get addressed because people run these organizations, people run government. And so I think it has to start right here, and that's a challenge as a nation, as a community, to get everyone to look internally so that in every seat that we sit in, we can be an ally and we can start to change from our location.
Thank you.
So first off, Erin and I have been very close friends for a very long time. So with all due respect, I'm going to disagree with her right off of the bat. And I'm going to suggest that this is not a complex issue. This is a very simple issue. This is a simple issue of supply and demand. For the last 35 or 40 years in Sarasota and Manatee County, we have been focused on the construction of market rate housing with absolutely no understanding of how that market rate housing is increasing the demand for the need of service workforce housing, meaning those people that are working at or near minimum wage that are guaranteeing this concierge lifestyle that the persons moving into the market rate housing are not only going to expect, but they're going to demand. So after 35 years of this unbelievably ignorant mindset of focusing exclusively on the supply side of affordable housing, we need to start focusing on the demand side, because only focusing on supply will never remedy this issue. We need to be asking this question at every land use hearing, every school board meeting, every hospital board meeting. How is this policy decision going to be impacting this grotesque, this oceanic divide between the supply and the demand of affordable housing? Is it going to make it worse? Is it going to be neutral? Is it going to make it better? The reality is that we approve these luxury condominiums, we approve these gated communities every other day. And I'm a former county commissioner, by the way. I was 12 years a county commissioner. I'm a former real estate broker. I have had more land use hearings under my belt than any person in Sarasota and Manatee County that wasn't paid to be there. But we never asked this question: how are these decisions going to impact this imbalance of affordable housing for the supply and the demand? And until that changes, until we start asking these developers, until we start asking these policymakers that you are actually increasing the demand for this service workforce that needs housing in respectable neighborhoods, close to good schools, and near their workplace, this problem is going to get worse and worse and worse. So for me, it's real simple. We need to look at supply and demand. We need to be looking at the demand side and holding the people and the decisions that are creating the demand accountable for the supply deficiencies.
Well said, John. Well said.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to be here. There's a complex look on the supply and demand and housing. Working with the Housing Authority is really very difficult to look at how this is being proportioned. Okay, so you look at locations where you have poor catchment areas. In other words, you have poor individuals or poor family where they are resided. That's where you don't have any amenities. They are secluded. They are segregated from the rest of the community. So what it does is that you begin to have difficulty in terms of them getting job, getting transportation, having access to surrounding amenities, and it's creating a lot of problems to those who are living within those areas. So when you travel within a community, you see that segregated path. For example, I came from Washington, D.C., moved to Tampa in 2000. There's this look about housing authorities because the social complementarity of the people that we serve are quite different from the rest of the community. There's a lack of belongingness within the community. So nobody wants to live close to them. So nobody wants to live close to them. And I remember then that every time you drive through the community and you see public housing site, you will immediately recognize it. So we saw that as a problem. We identified that as a problem. And before you begin to apply a solution, you have to identify your problems. So what we did was, of course, looking at the individuals and the family that we serve. They don't have jobs. They don't have education. They don't have means of connecting to amenities that are within the surrounding context. So there's all this problem that you have to deal with. And if you continue to provide, they will be stagnated. They will not be able to be self-sufficient. So what we did then is to bring them in every time we started any redevelopment effort. And we started to involve our residents in what we do so that they can take ownership into our developments. We started to make sure that if we engage in any redevelopment effort, we want to make sure that it's not different from what you see within the surrounding community, because that way you can then seamlessly connect those two communities and then begin to establish services and form partnership with service providers so that they can begin to educate our residents and then bring a sense of humanity to that environment, because the policy is not helping those individuals. And that's what we did. So right now, if we drive through all of our development, they don't look like public housing. If you saw anything that looked like public housing, it is somebody else's. Now, you begin to see developers want to do business with Tampa Housing Authority because of what we have done. And then I will talk about this. I don't want to take too much time talking about this now. But our residents now, because of the program that we set in place and services that we're providing to them, we have lawyers, we have doctors, we have pharmacists. They are now being self-sufficient. If I show you the properties that we have developed, affordable housing that we have built, we have a development site, okay, that sat there 483 units within the downtown district. For the longest, it was built in the 50s, segregated from that from the surrounding area. Nobody will even recognize that it's 28-acre site. After redevelopment, that place now, because of course 483 units within 28 acres, you can tell immediately it's underdeveloped. Is definitely not developed to the zoning capacity. So what we did then, brought this place at full development, brought it to 2,500 units. It's still being developed. We have it 12 buildable blocks, LEED ND. All the buildings are LEED, silver, or gold. And we have our residents now, it becomes a mixed-use, mixed-income community, has retails, has a lot of jobs within the area. This is a place that used to occupy only 19 jobs, did not have any contribution to the tax base. Now we have over 1,700 jobs post-construction. And you can begin to see how a community is being energized and being vibrantly brought to life. And this is the part that most people are not looking at. But if you saw most developers, they are interested in building market rate because that's where they think that funding income will be amenable to them. But that's not what we're doing. So we are now partnering with developers to make sure that we engage with them to develop more affordable housing so that it will be accessible to those that has been disenfranchised.
Thank you, David. And Chris, I mean, kind of tying into that, what you're talking about is why this is important in terms of elevating our community. And so I'd love to hear from you about how you vision that affordability factor elevating, why this should be important. It sounds like most people here would agree that this is a problem that needs addressing, and there's some value in addressing it appropriately. But could you talk a little bit about what that long-term gain is for our community in terms of really focusing in on these disparities?
Yeah, so if we address the affordable housing issue and the lack of that, right, based on the solutions that we know work and those things that we know we need to implement as a community, the impact and elevation of our community is going to be less mental health issues, right? I saw for years, working with the Salvation Army, that when we house somebody, mental health symptoms subside, right? You're going to have a fiscal impact to that, right? It's less of a taxation on the system itself, so that those of higher acuity and higher need are going to get the services that are needed, because we have limited services and limited resources within the system. So you end up elevating the entire community by that affordable housing unit that is a catalyst for change. Right? So if you do that, you have a fiscal impact, you have a mental health impact, you have, I mean, it's so broad spread. You have a stop in generational poverty, a stop in generational homelessness. Right? When you look at a child who's experienced homelessness, the rates of them experiencing homelessness as an adult skyrocket. So if you can stop that cycle at the very base level of just a safe place to live, that's affordable, that doesn't end up causing more stress on the family that's living there because they're on the absolute fiscal edge of their possible, income, you end up with an entirely different home, an entirely different family, no matter who it is.
Great, thank you. Thank you, that's wonderful. Would any of the other panelists like to chime in on the elevation piece of this?
Yeah, I would, because when we talk about affordability, those of us that are in the industry, we talk about it so nonchalantly. It's basically a mathematical formula where we calculate the 30% of a household's income cannot be exceeded in order for a household to be sustainably housed. In other words, if you're spending 50 or 60% of your income on housing, then that means that there's another expense that you're not paying for, such as health care, child care, transportation, and a host of other things. So the sustainable number is 30%. So there's only three, I'm not a math expert, but this is real simple algebra. There's only three numbers in this calculation, right? There's the cost of housing, which varies tremendously, and we try to bring that down by reducing impact fees and expedited permitting and all these other things that we talk about for affordable housing, again, all on the supply side. And then there's a 30% number, and really that number cannot be altered. And the lower income you go, the higher that number should be, or the lower the number should be. But we're going to stick with 30%, and the household, or the cost of housing, we cannot change. But nobody wants to talk about the third number, and that's income, right? Nobody wants to talk about the reality that if we increased household income, we would reduce the necessity, this unmet need for affordable housing. So it's time that we bring that into this conversation openly, despite the fact that a lot of people don't want to talk about it, unless we're talking about household income and how much these hardworking people are making, this $12 and $13 an hour, which is unsustainable completely in this area. We're not going to solve this problem.
Thank you, John.
He's not passionate at all.
Must be why he's in the middle.
Right. So Harvest House, we do affordable housing, and so we have the opportunity to actually house low-income families. And one of the things that, because we are not in the development of housing to a large extent, we do a little bit, but not a lot, we try to control the things we can control. And one of those things is looking at increasing skill level and education. So while a family is in our permanent supportive housing program, we offer opportunities for a parent to go back to school, to go to certificate program, because we know how many are we have in this community, Sarasota Technical, Manatee Technical, SCF, LECOM. And Harvest House will actually pay, thanks to our funders, for 13 months while they're in housing with us for rent and utilities. So we're looking at long-term. Yes, they're in an affordable place to live right now, because even after they're done with their education, they can stay with us for another year to get their feet on the ground in their new career. But what are the other ways besides the affordable housing that maybe they are increasing their skill in education, so they are increasing their income, so they do actually graduate out of a supportive housing system, and now they are, in a higher wage and a higher paying job. Something that housing is infrastructure, and we always talk about the roads and the bridges and all that kind of stuff, but housing is infrastructure, and the more that we can come together from the local, state, and federal levels and actually invest in housing as we use our other tax dollars to invest in infrastructure, we need to do the same thing for housing. And having people move into affordable housing, and most importantly, I think, is home ownership. And investing and giving communities, especially Black and brown communities, the BIPOC community, the opportunity to purchase a home. Because we know that for, I know my family, it started with my parents owning their first home, generational wealth, and a home that they'll leave to us, and then we can leave to our children. And so there's really, when you take our tax dollars and start to invest in home ownership, what a ripple effect that is in for generations. And I think it's a dollar well spent.
Well said.
And I just want to add about elevating community. With Habitat Families, over and over again, the conversation about why this was going to be so important was because they no longer had to pick up every year and move their children to another school, transportation issues, over and over again. What does this house mean to you? And it meant the stability. And when you're stable, then you can do all the things that you want to do, but you also can invest in your community. And when we have a community that is constantly rising in prices, that means families are constantly looking for a less expensive place to live. We have transition going on. And while we'd like to, be welcome to transition, there is the importance of stability that invests in a community and keeps it solid. And I know we're going to talk about some of the other solutions, but one of the things that Habitat did, and there are other communities that do this, is when housing stock isn't available in terms of new houses or additional houses, spending time repairing existing houses in communities that are stable, where families live, can make all the difference in the world. It keeps it for long-term families. It keeps housing safe and viable for the future generations that will come in. So there are these solutions. If we're not going to plan for housing, which is what we need to do, absolutely like infrastructures, then at the very least, let's put money into the houses that are there and the families that are there to keep these communities solid and whole.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, listen, I know we're running long, everybody, and I appreciate your support in being here and, keeping engaged in conversation and listening. And I know it's a lot to really take in, but we do have to close, unfortunately. So I think one of the things that we'd like to do to highlight is to show an opportunity, and David, you kind of alluded to this earlier, around what it could look like, what the impact could be. And, if you're fired up about this topic, which I get the sense in the room and a lot of people are, then I think we got to continue this conversation beyond tonight and work together with our amazing community partners to take it to that next level, to start bringing solutions to our community, to wake people up in terms of saying, we can't keep doing what we've been doing and expect different results. And if we keep going down this road, we're going to lose a lot of the things that we've held dear and that has made our community so special. And we're not going to attract the workforce that we want if we don't have a place for them to live. So with that, David, would you please share with us a little bit about one of the projects that you have? I think you might have some slides that we can show, hopefully, if we still have the time for that. And, just kind of give you a positive vision to take with you from here. Did we have technology issues? All right, so we're going to have to dream it.
But yes. we have several projects of similarities. One that I talked about, the 28-acre site that was former public housing site, was built in the 50s. And the second one was the one that we're doing right now. We're in partnership with Related Urban Group out of Miami. That was the first public housing site development that was built in Tampa. It was built in 2 phases, 1940 and 1960. So you can imagine all the history associated with that area. It's within the West Tampa. It's called West River. West Tampa, of course, was established 1892. The only business that was running with around that time was the cigar industry. And of course, after a time, that declined and the whole place went dead. So you go south, you connect to Kennedy. Kennedy is affluent. Of course, that's where you have all the south of Tampa rich components. And then you have downtown. And so that pocket is just isolated from every access within the area. So, and I remember the houses, single-family homes not far from that location were being sold, 2-bedroom, 1,400 square feet, were being sold for $100, maybe $80,000. But we demolished our site 2018, 2019, relocated our residents in 2016. We started the development right away. That particular site was holding only 820 units. We demolished 670. And we retained the only building that was standing was the senior housing, all affordable, that was built in 1960, 150 units. So what we did then was to retain that and then redevelop all the other sites. So suddenly, as soon as we start the redevelopment, now I want to just add that in terms of affordable housing, it's not easy just to say affordable. To make a development affordable, you have to amass all kinds of sources of fund. And, utilize the city, utilize the county, use brownfield, because you have to make it affordable so that it becomes affordable to the users. So, and we have now, we tore down 670. We have now built, you have Publix coming into that area. We have all kinds of retails showing interest, and also we have commercial on that side as well. We have now completed roughly 1,100 units in place, all occupied. And we're progressing with the rest. And that end of that site will connect to the Riverwalks. This was a place that was completely isolated. And nobody knew about it. And then all the houses downside, the same house that was being sold for $120,000. Now, they're now being sold for $500,000. So we see development now continuing all the way Rome connecting to Kennedy. You can begin to see how the communities begin to weave together. Instead of disconnected, they're now connected. You can literally have sense of walkability, securities within that area. There's a lot of investment coming into that area, with jobs are being created. And those individuals, residents that we relocated, we gave them right to come back at full completion. So now because of the services that we are providing, they are self-sufficient. Some of them decided to just move on because they have good education, making better money. We have Grow Financial coming as to occupy one of the retail bays. So you can begin to see the changes that we have within the area. And these are some of the examples that we have done with all the developments that we've completed.
Thank you, David.
I just don't want to take too much
Thank
time.
you. Well, obviously, there's that public-private partnership aspect to all of this, as well as influencing policy. So we have much work to be done, and I hope you all will become allies and really get out in our community and express those needs so that we can ensure that we can actually fulfill some of these dreams and get people in our community a safe and affordable place that they can live so they stay here and grow our amazing businesses and help contribute towards that end product of what our society can be. So another round of applause for our panelists, and I will ask Tarnisha to come on back up with John and close us out. Thank you.
Another hand for all of our panelists and our moderators. It has been definitely time well spent. This here program started with this young man right behind, or right beside me. And it was a vision that we tossed around and we were intentional about doing. The first one, we had approximately 50 people, perhaps?
I think so, yeah.
At that event. And it was centered around DE&I work. John understood the struggle as it relates to procurement as an African American, I think a lot because of the conversations that we've had. We've teamed up to try to pursue opportunities together. And we kind of was forming a discussion around how can we really have meaningful movement, traction. And I believe this is where this all came from when we started talking and had the kick around kind of conversations. It's important for us to do this type of work in our community. It cannot be done with people that look like me only. It has to be done with people that looks like John. It has to be a buy-in that everyone has in the community. We cannot sit here and say, if I am the person to do this by myself, then I can't go far. I need a team in order to push me further. So it is our hope, and if I can get the cued music, please, thank you. Hallelujah. It is, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, Tarnisha, that first panel that you put together, just the bravery of the people up there and tapping into Terry Daniel, I think a lot of groups are going to want to be ringing your phone. When the New College gentleman stood up there and said, I need those same people coming to our CEO of New College. I think there's other municipalities, counties, it was Hillsborough, I think Pinellas is doing it. I think where we stand today, when you have to drive to Polk County to be able to do work, I completely agree, and I think we have to be change agents here. I feel a sense of belonging in this room, but when we leave this room, we have to have the wheels on the car, the gas in the engine, we all have to be able to race down that track together, and I think everybody in this room believes that, and we have to tap into, you assembled so many great people up there. The brain trust was incredible, and I think we have to tap into each other and row in the same direction and move the needle and do these actionable items. And it will take a lot. I think President Kennedy said, we don't do these things because they are easy, but we do them because they are hard. You've really gone out, you've done some hard things. The first page on your website, I looked at it, is the construction week with full integration, diversity and inclusion, inclusive construction week. That is what matters here, and it's bold and it's huge, and we have to do it. And it does. It starts with us in this room. So I keep talking over this amazing, talented singer. So let's all get up and sing it.
So before we get up and sing, John, the one thing that we want to put out into the atmosphere, and I think it's important, we have Hillsborough County here that has a procurement or a participation goal in place. They have someone that is designated to that work. You have USF here that has someone dedicated to that work. We have Bank of America that is here that has someone dedicated to that work.
So we have templates that we can use and share.
Not only that, we need to also look at those ones that do not have that template. When we're talking about me leaving Manatee County to drive to Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Polk County in order to do that work, we need to challenge our elected officials. We need to challenge our municipalities that is here locally. I see city officials, I see county officials, I see nonprofits here. We need to make that a change right now. So as we are listening, if he can crank that up, I need you to tell me that we're in this together. By the time we come back next year, we need to have some actionable items that we can see tangible change has come. So again, we're going to put that out there for you guys to have that challenge. And not only are we going to have that challenge, I'm going to call you the city of Bradenton. I'm going to call you the county of Manatee County. I'm going to call you Sarasota County. I love you guys. I really do. But I'm going to hold you guys accountable. You'll get a note from me and an email or however that looks. And I do look forward to hearing back from you. You guys have a great evening and time well spent.